what would really be helpful and where can we help?
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook, presented by Details Interactive. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 15, and today's guest is Bernardine Wu. Bernardine is a longtime industry friend and the co-founder of FitForCommerce. I've completed some projects as a consultant for FitForCommerce, as well as having them execute projects for me while at Steve Madden and Amerimark. Before we get started, a quick thank you as always to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at max@hippodirect.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Bernardine, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to find some time to do this. We're recording at the end of May 2020. We're all sitting in the middle of this global pandemic. How are you and your family doing through all of this?
We're doing great, actually. It's, of course, interesting times, as they say. I actually have enjoyed lockdown because I have my kids are stuck with me, but I know it's very stressful in a lot of corners, health-wise as well as business-wise. So I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about it. It's hard to have a conversation without talking about it, but my heart, my thoughts go to everyone who may be struggling.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. But before we jump into conversations around retail and its impact, let's go back to what I've heard some friends talk about as your first story. So, growing up, family life, and what do you attribute perhaps, your upbringing or any aspects of your upbringing to what you ultimately did in your career?
Well, I'm a born and bred New Yorker. Which means I can talk a lot faster than I'm talking right now. Definitely a product of growing up in the city. And, there was a time when I knew how to get from anywhere to anywhere on the subway. I was definitely a city rat, as my mom used to call me. Had classic kind of tiger parents, but I appreciate how focused they were on my education and preparing me for the future. One of my first jobs was actually lifeguarding. And in a way, that was sort of like an easy, fun job. I was a swimmer growing up. But I don't know, maybe it was the start of something, some mindset around being a lifesaver. I think a lot of what I learned in growing up in the city and growing up kind of fast, has definitely played into my my life, which has been rich and diverse. I grew up with many different colors and creeds and religions around me. So I've always been used to a very diverse crowd. It actually was kind of shocking to me when I went to college at Dartmouth in New Hampshire to be a minority and kind of what that meant. And it's kind of funny that I didn't think about these things until I got into, the work world or other areas about being a minority and a female. I would say that those things have definitely shaped me for sure. And I've had lots of different jobs since.
Did before you get into the other jobs, did being a minority, being a woman make you work harder? Did you have to work harder to get what you thought you wanted to get?
Definitely. I mean, I think people work hard for any number of reasons or wiring. So I like to think that I had that wiring, and my parents certainly have that wiring. But I think there is an element of being a minority, probably more about being, a little Asian girl than being a female in the early days. I mean, there's, the Asian Americans often feel like the invisible race, right? We're supposed to be overachievers and, true to form. I had piano lessons and was supposed to be a doctor. But gave up piano in high school and changed majors when I was in college. But Yeah, I definitely think so. I think there's like an extra amount of, if I'm not going to be the tallest or the most physically strong or have the biggest booming voice, then I better be the smartest person or most capable person in the room. So yeah, I think that's true.
Right, gotcha. And so you graduated Dartmouth, and what did you start as your career path?
So I went through corporate recruiting, which is pretty big there, and I thought I wanted to be an investment banker, a trader, be on Wall Street. It was, of course, very romanticized at the time, but I actually ended up in consulting, and I started at what was then Anderson Consulting. I thought I was joining a management consulting group, and then when I showed up, it turned out to be information management, IT consulting. So all of a sudden, as an English major, I had to learn programming. But, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because, first of all, I learned that I was not a fantastic programmer. But I got it, and I learned, technology from the basics, from the code level up. And it gave me a great experience and a great appreciation for technology. I also learned amazing PowerPoint skills because we work a lot on proposals and presentations and so on. So from the technology side, the PowerPoint skills, and also we did, of course, do business consulting. I think those three things are foundations that I take with me and use every day, even as I progressed into different industries and different fields.
So how long of a period of time was it from graduation at Dartmouth to when FitForCommerce was developed?
Oh gosh, then you'd know how old I was.
Well, maybe there's a method to the madness. I've known you for a long time, and I have no idea.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. It's as I look back, I wouldn't say it was a linear route, but there were some progressions. At Anderson then, Accenture now, was a really large company. It was like 50,000 people, and every company that I went to got smaller and smaller. After Accenture, I actually did go to Wall Street, but I worked more in strategy around trading technology and technology strategies. And that's where it was great to have that both business side and technical background. And I learned a lot about Wall Street, and I actually realized I don't want to be a banker and I don't want to be a trader, but I like being the help. So from there, I went on to a couple of other Wall Street firms, and then went to what was one of the earliest online trading, but this is institutional trading systems at the time. And that was kind of an intro into, the early days of the internet. And then from there, I was asked to start a company that was a technology provider, one of the first software as a service e-commerce providers to the retail industry. And so that was my entree into this industry, which is funny because people think, they normally think, oh, were you a merchant? Were you a marketer? And really I wasn't. But I have learned to pick up industries and pick up, the business knowledge along the way. So ran this technology company and started a couple of other companies, and then just sort of an observation. You get to that point in your life sometimes where you can sit back and observe and see, well, what is the need in the industry? And at the time, about 12 years ago, we just saw a lot of brands and retailers and retail companies struggling with digital and e-commerce because it was, as you know, Mark, is practically new, 10, 20 years ago. The catalogers and some of the larger companies had started to figure it out, but not really. And so we saw an opportunity there to help the market. And that's when we launched FitForCommerce in 2008. Of course, not a great time in the market.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
timing.
good timing, Bernardine. Yeah.
But we did fine at that time, and we're able to help. We're proud to have helped, gosh, I think almost 600 brands and retailers and businesses with their digital growth since
Right.
then.
All right. So you create FitForCommerce in a sentence
Mm-hmm.
or two, and you kind of just alluded to it in a sentence or two. What is FitForCommerce?
So we think of ourselves as a specialized consultancy that helps businesses grow by leveraging digital. And I know that sounds really broad. It's kind of intentional. but really most businesses, and I mean almost all businesses now, need to rely on digital and technology and e-commerce, or what we now call omni-channel, in order to grow. And in fact, it used to be retailers and brands, but now it's anybody selling anything, online. Of course, the grocers have come along, and travel and hospitality and financial services and so on. So anybody selling anything online, we have a team of, I consider them sort of Navy SEALs, folks that have been there, done that, and run e-commerce practices, run direct-to-consumer, run retail. People like you, Mark, where you guys can bring that hands-on, practical experience. Having worked at one of the big consultancies, one of the things that I found is that there are a set of clients that just really need that expertise at the right time to do, a really important project, or get them going on something, and work alongside them in a really lean way. And that's kind of the way that we've built the company.
Yeah, I think sometimes in consultants, when you're in let's say you're a role person in a company. I've been in a number of different positions, and it's despite the fact that you have respect internally, it's always nice to have an independent third party come in and help you validate or help you think through, difficult challenges. I know that you guys you personally served a good role for us at Madden, where you participated as a moderator
Mm-hmm.
of sorts from our senior team, so that we could identify a roadmap and try to stay on a certain game plan of the things we wanted to roll out. So I do see lots of need for that. So how do you think about yourself against versus the other consultancies? How do you differentiate yourself?
Well, I like to say that we're big enough and we're small enough. So, we do compete with the big guys, and often win, sometimes not. Sometimes our competition is an independent consultant, a single person. Sometimes our biggest competition is the internal team deciding not to do anything or not to take on this project. And half the time they call us a year later and say, that thing that we needed to do, we're ready. We need your help now. As you kind of alluded to before, like, we can take different roles in a way, or perform different roles. In some cases, it's we'll join your team because you're missing a CMO, or a architect, or a marketing person, or a leader. Sometimes it's we really need to get this initiative done and we don't have the bandwidth for it. Could you guys help do it? Or we don't have the expertise and we need you to bring your experience and the fact that you've done this dozens of times before. Or it's we come on as an accelerator. So if you think about any situation, right, whether it's business or personal, if you could wave a magic wand and some genie shows up to do whatever it is you need them to do, in some ways that's how we can morph. I know it's very cliche for people to say, give a consultant says, give me your watch and they'll tell you what time it is. But there's sort of some truth to that, in that, we have different perspective, and we have data, we have IP, and we have experience that we can bring to the table. And I think, if planned right and lean, then it can also be affordable.
Right. Well, what have you learned about running your own business, as well as being, kind of the face of your consultancy, and people oftentimes coming to work with you or want to work with you because they want Bernardine? You obviously are backed up by lots of good people, but I've heard you talk to me about that. So what have you learned?
Well, it is certainly rewarding. We get a lot of kudos. We're really, really proud of the reputation we have, and when we walk around trade shows, and I hope we all get to walk around trade shows again soon in the future. We feel like rock stars because we have so many contacts in the industry. Even if someone has not been a client of ours, there's just a ton of recognition and goodwill. But I have to say, it's running the company, being a business owner and an entrepreneur, it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. And I've run departments that have multi-million-dollar budgets, but when it's your own money and you're responsible for the payroll of, 30 families, which means you're affecting, 30 times whatever, 2 to 4 people per family. That's a lot of pressure. So anybody that is an entrepreneur, whether they are a one-man shop or one-woman shop or multiple, I give them a lot of kudos, because there's a lot of guts that it takes to get there, or craziness. I'm still thinking there's more craziness for me. And so it's hard. And so there is definitely a difference between being an executive who has, a job at a company, and yes, you feel like you own it and you operate like you own it. That is still different than actually owning it and running it. Now, having said that, I didn't call it Woo Consulting on purpose. We set out to build a team and a capability. And, to be honest, I'm not involved in 80% of our sales or our projects. And that speaks to the power of the team. And so the way that we've constructed our practice and our business is really so that the client is buying the team. And to be honest, I'm not the best consultant either. The team is filled with amazing skills and talent and personalities that are better than me. Sometimes, I'm the talking head, like right now. And so maybe, I may get a little bit more visibility, but I think we're really great at promoting our team, and, everyone writes white papers and speaks at conferences and gets, visibility, as well as doing the hard work.
Got it. And when you are selling a deal, who's generally the group, or what's the group in a potential client that's bringing you in? Is it it may be all of the above that I'll talk about. Is it a board? Is it the president or CEO? Is it middle management? Is it IT versus marketing? Give me some flavor about that.
Well, you said it. I mean, Mark, it's all of the above. Every client situation is somewhat unique in that you got to figure out who are the stakeholders, who is the actual, economic sponsor, as we call it, who are the inside coaches, who are the folks that, what roles do they play internally. I have sold software in the past. I have sold, services in the past. This kind of a sale, on the one hand, is very easy because everybody needs help. It's just a question of what kind of help, how much, where, who, for what. But at the same time, sometimes that help is not so easily defined. So sometimes a client will, they'll kind of know that they need help, but they don't know what help. They probably couldn't even write a brief saying, this is what I'm trying to do. It's almost like they can just talk. And we have to take in what they're saying, and we have to be good listeners to hear them and hear through what they're saying, so that we can, and again, use our experience to understand what do they really need, or what would really be helpful, and where can we help. Other times, clients are very clear, and it's coming from, the CIO, and it's a technology to do, or it's the CMO and it's a marketing to do, or the two paired together, which is one of the best case scenarios is when the client's executive team or the sponsors are already aligned and know what kind of help they need. But some of the time, or a lot of the time, when we are working with our clients, part of what we're doing also is alignment and educating amongst the management team or ownership and or executive team. And so, yeah, we've got to kind of morph ourselves into the different, to speak to the different levels and corners of an organization. And that is all the way from, private equity ownership, public companies and boards, down to executive leadership, to management, to, the team that's actually doing the work.
And you've been at this 12 years with FitForCommerce, and obviously in e-commerce and in digital marketing, so much has changed. And you talk about alignment. What have you seen about the organizational structure in these retail businesses or clients that you've had, and how that organizational structure perhaps has changed over the last dozen years?
It's definitely changed. I mean, Mark, you remember the years where e-commerce was like that orphan child, right, on the side, and some brands and retailers felt like they had to have it, or okay, it's just going to be a small percentage, or they even wholly outsourced it to a vendor. and then as it grew, not just in size, but also in importance, because it became, kind of like the main representation of the brand. E-commerce kind of got, folded in and sometimes became a strategic, important initiative. And then all of a sudden the VP of e-commerce was popular. But at the same time, that VP of e-commerce and that team was the digital team, and everybody else was kind of still doing their thing. But then chief marketing officers, chief merchandising officers, CIOs, they became more digital and as well, and it became a much more integrated kind of an organization. So again, the team or the organization had to change, and you saw people like the digital marketer coming out from e-commerce and into the CMO's organization, or some of the digital tech people going into the CIO's organization. And then you had the advent of the chief digital officer, which had 10 different kinds of definitions in 10 different companies, but often became the person who had sort of like the digital flag bearer and digital expertise, but didn't have all the line functions underneath them. And I would say recently, I think the CDO role has somewhat gone away. I think when an organization is looking to accomplish something with digital, or now omni-channel, or whatever. Omni-channel is sometimes a bad word now, and I don't know what kind of words people. Some people frown upon it, but sometimes it's still apropos. But I think that the role is still morphing, and who's involved is becoming broader, to where now everyone has a role in digital, from HR and legal and real estate all the way through, operations and so on. So I know that was a long answer. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of like, it was centralized, then it becomes decentralized, then it goes back to being centralized. And that's natural. I think there's a natural progression for organizations to morph and to outsource, and then bring something back in-house. And I guess the last bit I'd say about that is that as long as there is an sort of intention to it and a deliberateness to it, that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, because I would agree with you that it's changed quite a bit. I've seen it in the roles that I've had. I've seen decentralization, centralization. I've seen e-commerce underneath four-wall retail. I've seen it separated by itself. I've seen IT separate IT for digital, and then also seen it under IT. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. People are still just trying to figure it out, and sometimes it's a function of the people that they have, and not wanting to upset the team. You don't necessarily always have the right pegs in the right holes, but
That's a great point, that it depends on the people as well. Sometimes we say like your next hire, can change your next hire. I would say that, I don't know, maybe a good 70% of our projects involve some kind of an organizational assessment, development, retooling, because even if it's a technology project, there is, some amount of organizational impact or change or retooling that's needed. So, alongside that project, we will always have sort of an org perspective.
the devil's in the details. You've probably heard that phrase time and time again in your professional life. Projects get started with great intentions, but you no longer have the time to pay attention to the little things that can make the difference between success and failure. At Details Interactive, you can discuss your business with a seasoned direct-to-consumer marketing executive who has helped launch and grow web businesses and integrate multi-channel marketing initiatives. Learn more at detailsinteractive.com. If we think back to, let's say before 2020 started, what were the kinds of projects or topics that you were most being asked about? Just as an example, each year, each couple of years, there are kind of new buzz terms or buzz things, like buy online, pick up in store was, very prevalent, and still people being very slow. And let's do this pre-COVID. So what were the hot buttons?
Oh my God, are we allowed to remember pre-COVID? I would say there were a lot of the staple projects going on, right? There's always people, there's always, a rethinking of marketing spend and, e-commerce platforms and large systems as well as smaller point solutions. But I would say there's definite focus on data. And I know saying data sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but, certainly customer data, but I would say enterprise data is a big, messy knot in most companies. Now, a couple, years ago, Mark, when we used to talk, it was how do I get at the data, right? How do I collect the data? Where is the data? How am I going to get the data together? Generally, I'd say now everybody's got a lot of data. It's just, what are we using it for, and how are we able to organize it and use it, and as they say, get them into insights and actionable. So a lot of the project requests that we were getting in work was enterprise data or customer data platforms or BI and analytics, and it's all related, of course. And what makes this topic tricky is that there isn't one solution. There isn't one, set, like one type of vendor, and you just need to choose amongst these 5 vendors. It's actually an ecosystem or a set, and depending on your strategy, you might be able to solve it with 2 or 3 vendors, or 5 vendors, or 4 vendors and some custom development. And so it's client by client that we have to work through. So I'm going to go with data.
Right. And isn't it, sometimes a case of which is the next provider in is dependent upon what your tech stack already looks like and how much of an appetite you have to change more than one thing or 2 things?
Yeah, I think you said it. It's about the appetite for change. I haven't met a CMO or a CIO that doesn't wish that they could start from scratch.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
where I was going. Yeah.
there's always going to be some legacy or some contract that you're inheriting or something. And even if you made the right decision 3 years ago, it might not be the right decision for now. So it is this I call it like this puzzle piecing, and it is this re-rationalization of what do I have, where do I want to be, what should I rip and replace now, what should I upgrade, what should I enhance with or add on to, or what should I start from scratch with. It becomes like these crazy diagrams that, yes, we're good consultants, we create these diagrams, but what they represent is the thinking behind that vision and that roadmap to get there. And gosh, I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of roadmaps, and every single one of them is unique and has some parameters to it that are different. And that's just the hard work. I mean, whether you have consultants or not, that's the work that needs to be done. And it just takes, rolling up your sleeve and thinking through the possibilities and documenting them and exploring the feasibility and the cost structure and how does that affect the P&L, and how does that affect my, if you're the IT person, how does that affect your business counterparts, and vice versa.
Right. And so those were kind of comments, pre-COVID. So now we're, 4 months into COVID. The world is, really changed quite a bit. Digital commerce, if it's possible, seemingly even more important than it was before. So if anything, what's different about the kinds of things that potential clients come to you asking about?
Well, I think there's a saying now that the year 2030 just happened in 2020. That a lot of the plans that retailers, and again, I'm saying retailers as a broad term, that retailers had, all of a sudden had to happen quickly. So many were talking about BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, click and collect, curbside, and these various omni-channel capabilities, and all of a sudden it became a matter of survival. So I think with the closing down of stores, at least for the brick and mortar omni-channel retailers, it became, how do I serve the customer on my e-commerce site, which of course involves warehouse fulfillment and customer service, and also how do I do curbside pickup or contactless payments. Of course, the grocery, and essentials retailers, they stayed open and they had to figure out some changes to their physical stores, but the ones that of course were hit the hardest are the ones that have had to close down now for weeks and months. And that project that was going to take 3 years or 2 years to get better inventory in stores in order to do buy online, pick up in store, all of a sudden got done in 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Well, isn't that incredible, though? I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it as a consumer and I've seen it as a consultant. There's just so many things that, and maybe it's a little bit different than what you're saying, so many things that brands wanted to do. It was on their roadmap. They didn't get it done for whatever reason. They were afraid, they didn't have the resources. And now all of a sudden it's thrust upon them and they
Yeah.
figure out how to do it. I don't know what that says about our ability to make decisions or to really clear the decks to get things done, but it is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's both a compliment as well as not a compliment, right? That some of these things, on roadmaps, had longer timelines, but then, when it came down to survival, human nature is to figure stuff out. That's great. So I hope companies learn from this in a way that gives them a new MO, maybe even a new culture of experimentation faster, of getting things done faster and not necessarily perfect. And I, in the environment, in the COVID environment, the customer, despite seeing all these crazy videos of customers getting pissed off and spitting on each other, that's of course in the minority, but I think customers are a little more forgiving right now.
Yeah.
In getting their contactless curbside pickup, and being patient and waiting in the parking lot. So there is this window of a little bit of goodwill here, that played into it. But we've always promoted brands and retailers to give space to experimentation. So hopefully some of these things will stick in terms of how quickly someone can turn something around, how quickly we can experiment with something, and also maybe blowing some budget on something that didn't work out, and ownership or executive management seeing that as a win and not a fail.
Right. Gotcha. Question. Do you get frustrated ever?
Are we talking about with kids or are we talking about with work here?
Nah, work.
Yeah. I mean, definitely.
And how do you deal with the frustration that, we inevitably all have with our work?
Well, my team is lucky. We work from home a lot and we go to our clients. So we're not in an office where we have to watch ourselves a little bit. I think if you don't have frustration, then to a certain extent, you're not pushing yourself enough. And again, being a New Yorker, I think, we grew up with some hard conditions and some, and conflict and more of a street fighter kind of mentality. So, frustration, I think, is a natural part of it. In all my, all those like management tests and things, like I have an analytical mind. And so I tend to break problems down and then solve for them like as if they were like a math problem or something like that. I'm also a talker and I talk things through. I'm very lucky to have a team that are great listeners and are great thinkers. My co-founder, Cynthia Canaris, that she is a lifeline. And so we will have, either very tactical sessions or very strategic sessions and venting sessions. And to be able to do all those three things, either at one time or at, spaced out at various times, is important. I don't know if you remember, Mark, but in the early days, we had a booth at one of the conferences, and it was all it was a big sign, and it said "Vent here" in big letters.
No,
and
I don't remember that.
There was a couch, and we just thought, let's just give that a try. People were coming. People were crying at our booth. They were just sharing, their frustrations, and we just listened. We listened. It sounds crazy, but some people were even like hugging as they were leaving, and we just listened and we learned from it. But I think we felt like there was more of a connection, and I don't know, I might have to bring that one back. But I think sharing and listening and being compassionate are are important. And, what we're going through right now, of course, is like such an extreme test of our humanity. And there's nothing like something like this to bring out the worst of us in us and the best in us.
If you had the opportunity to, as I know you probably do anyway, to sit in front of CEOs, presidents of, some handful of specialty retailers or department store management, what would you say to them now in May of 2020 about things that they were perhaps not willing to do previously that they just absolutely have to do in this new normal?
I guess, first is like it's never too late, or hopefully it's never too late, and that there are still some things that we can do now. We were just having a conversation about flash sales, that if someone's e-commerce is not, maybe up to snuff, that, having a flash sale site stood up within 2 weeks might be a good solution. If you don't have the digital team or marketing team that you need, go borrow it, go get one, go hire, go ask for help. I think, we've seen some retailers have daily strategy sessions because information and the environment is changing, physically and digitally, on a daily basis, and of course by state, by county, et cetera, too. So I think I'd go back to my main message, which is it's never too late. Yes, it is the year 2030. So what are you going to do about it? And let's roll up our sleeves and prioritize. I think, and you alluded to this early in our conversation, Mark, that there's a lot of stuff that a brand or a retailer could do, right? You ask anybody, they've got a list as long as their arm of things that they know they need to do, or whether it's because they want to do it or they see what their competitors are doing. The question is just what's the priority. And so again, whether you do this with consultants or without, it's just rolling up your sleeves and going through that long list and then prioritizing and understanding where we're going to get bang for the buck. And the only thing that's changed pre-COVID versus now is that the formula into bang for the buck might have changed, right? The drivers might have changed now, but it's still the same foundation. It's still the same basics that are needed. So, suddenly curbside became way more important right now. People ask about post-COVID. I don't think there's such a thing as a post-COVID. It's just a new normal. And even if, even when there's a vaccine or when there's treatment, or if or when we, kick COVID's ass, there's going to be another potential virus or germ or infection or something that comes along. And, unfortunately, I think that's the way of the world. So I think the question isn't post-COVID, it's more what's the new norm. I mean, some of our clients we were doing exercises with them a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where the exercise was, what if 50% of our revenue came from online, right? Like how can we get there? How can we make that happen? And these were thoughts for really deeply rooted brick and mortar stores.
Right, but was that 50% was really as a portion of a larger business, not so kind of growing into it being 50% and growing the top line, not shrinking the business and having
right,
now 50%, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thinking was ahead of its time a couple of years ago, or even last year, right? But now all of a sudden it's survival thinking, and in a worse scenario where the top line is down too.
Yep, gotcha. How do you deal with tough clients? You must look. You had to work with me, and I'm sure there's a lot easier, and certainly hopefully some are a lot tougher. But how do you deal with a tough client, and how would you define a tough client? Is it before the deliverable is done? Is it during the process? What is it?
Well, okay. First of all, you were a tough client, but because you're tough on yourself, and you're also actually a nice guy. I know the audience might be, I'll vouch for you being a nice guy too, and a good friend. But I think people are just trying to do the right thing, and that right thing may be a combination of what's right for my company and what's right for me in their jobs. And our job is to help the company and also help, whoever's our sponsor or the team we're working with do great things, do great work, look good. Yes, there are tough personalities out there. Again, it goes back to that listening and compassionate, kind of vent here kind of mentality that we've had. And what we find out is that if somebody's being tough, it's because they want something. They care about something. It's our job to figure out what that is and what is that hot button or what is it, or what is this person really struggling with? Because maybe what they're struggling with isn't the mechanics of this project and the to-do. Maybe it's the politics. Maybe it's the history of it or the pressure that they have on it. So I can't say that we were perfect in every scenario, because we're people too, and we've learned along the way. But I don't think that there's a tough client that we haven't been able to have a good working relationship with, and we have like a 99.9% client satisfaction and referenceable and so on. And we haven't actually done used NPV, but I think if we did, we would probably score high. But and then sometimes I as I talk about with the team, there are times when someone is just going to be a tough cookie, and you still need to figure out how to get what you need or want to do right by the client company.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, and I think a tribute to you guys is how many people I know, myself included, that have worked with you at multiple stops, along their career path. And, generally speaking, unless you've done good work the first time, they're not going to bring you back the second time. So I think that's important. So we're getting down to the end of our show here and our time together. At the end of the show, I do what we call a 2-minute drill. So there's 7 questions that I ask each of the guests. Okay, if I run you through those 7 questions?
Sure.
Okay, first one, a brand that you admire or that inspires you?
I'm going to go actually with Airbnb, because I've used Airbnb. I'm an Airbnb host. And Airbnb has given me a whole new, trust in humanity, because there's a lot of generosity and kindness in the process. And I think that's what Airbnb represents.
Great. Favorite app that's on your phone?
My kids aren't going to like it, but Life 360. It's an app where you can track the people and where they are. And I can see exactly where my kids have been and how long.
And when your son goes to college, are you going to disable that?
Yes, but not really. But I don't think he's going to listen to this.
Okay. The last website other than Amazon that you shopped from?
Oh, I think it's probably Home Depot. I recently had a birthday, and I wanted a leaf blower.
That was your birthday present?
Yes.
Wow.
It's awesome. And then, of course, I got the leaf blower, and then I had to get the noise canceling, the really cool noise canceling Bose headphones as an excuse.
Yeah. Something that you're not good at, but that you wish that you were.
Car mechanics, for sure.
I could just see you sliding under the car to fix to change your oil.
I'm very mechanical. I'm very good spatially, but I just cannot understand car mechanics.
A charitable organization that you're passionate about?
Well, usually anything girls, anything about promoting girls. We work with Souls for Souls, Dress for Success, and Women for Women. Maybe there's something in the number 4, like FitForCommerce.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
To fly.
And other than your family, what's your most prized possession?
Ooh, my Snoopy. I'm a big Snoopy fan.
Oh, I didn't know that about you. So that now when I go to a conference and you ask for our fun facts, I'm going to be able to know a fun fact about you. Okay, there it is.
There you go.
Yeah. So Bernardine, thank you for doing this. If people are interested in reaching out to you, where on social media is the best way to find you?
At FitForCommerce. That's FITFOR Commerce, all one word, or on LinkedIn, FitForCommerce. And I've really enjoyed this, Mark. Really appreciate it. I love knowing you. and working with you. And this has been great. I can't believe it's been almost an hour.
Yeah, well, look, thank you. The feeling's mutual. We've had a really nice friendship for more than 10 years now. And, I've always valued your opinions and the people that you work with. You're absolutely right. You have a great team and very much enjoy getting to know all of them. So anyway, stay well. Good health to your family. Talk to you soon.
Likewise. Take care now.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Bernardine Wu for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, yet again we heard a story where the guest started down one career path and navigated to another. We heard Bernardine's story about being on Wall Street in tech strategy, which eventually brought her to boutique consulting. Your career is a process, so enjoy the ride and use each stop as a building block. Number 2, organizational structure can sometimes be guided not by what you think is optimal, but by the people you currently have within your team. We often deal with the square peg in the round hole. You know that you want to change the structure, but you're stuck because you just do not have the right people. Make the tough choices, either train and evolve the people to fit what you need, or move on and bring in the right team. And number 3, the year 2030 has happened in 2020. Digital initiatives are at the top of all retailers' roadmaps, and what might have waited to get done down the road most likely cannot wait. It's incredible how quickly some brands have moved on projects that they were thinking about doing but never got to during this pandemic. We need to have the mindset all the time. How do we best service our customers now? Do not look for reasons you cannot do something. Execute on the 90% solution rather than waiting for you to be able to execute the perfect solution. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at DetailsInteract and learn more at detailsinteractive.com. Until next time, the devil is in the details.